From now on, you will take care of my mom and sister with me. If you don't like it, let's break up, Phil suddenly declared. Why do I have to leave the house? I couldn't agree with Phil's sudden proposal. My sister-in-law, Julia, is a real troublemaker. Living with her would be unbearable for me. I tried to prevent this move-in plan, but Phil wouldn't listen, and eventually, he threatened me with divorce. But I wasn't prepared to give up so easily. I intended to find his weakness and turn the situation around. If he thought he could keep his secrets from me, he was gravely mistaken. I am Mandy Reynolds, a working housewife in her second year of marriage, age 38. We currently don't have children, but I wish we had. After graduating from vocational school, I worked full-time at a general hospital but reduced my hours for fertility treatments. Now, I work only in the mornings at a local clinic, worrying about fertility treatments and my husband, Phil, in my personal life. I was attracted to Phil's skills and character as an insurance salesman, which eventually led to us getting married. We both shared a strong desire to have children soon. It would be wonderful to have a house filled with children's laughter. I've always wanted children, but I had to consider my age. Why are you so down? It will eventually be possible. Phil seemed to think children would come without effort, but it wasn't that simple. After 2 years, there was still no sign of pregnancy. I tried discussing fertility treatments with Phil, but his response was unexpected. Do we really need to go to the hospital? Celebrities over 40 give birth normally. Why not leave it to nature? I want to do everything possible. You said you wanted children too, right? It's not like we're sick, right? And it costs money, doesn't it? We'll be able to find out whether it's due to an illness or not. If you're worried about the money, I'll pay for it, okay? Is that all right? Phil wasn't fully convinced, but reluctantly agreed to my proposal to pay for the medical expenses myself. Thankfully, I received some support from my parents, which was a relief. However, the situation was tougher than expected, and attending regular appointments while working full-time was challenging. The doctor says I need to come in every 3 days. It's a bit tough with work, but you've been doing great, and you can afford the consultation fees with your income and help from your parents, right? It should be fine. Phil seemed okay as long as it wasn't a financial burden on him, but I was somewhat dissatisfied with his attitude. However, I believed that everything would change for the better once we had a child and encouraged myself. On a weekday when Phil was at work and I was off from my part-time job, I had some rare alone time. I suddenly received a call from an unknown number. It was from Julia, my sister-in-law. I was curious about why she changed her number. Did you change your number? I was surprised to get a call from an unknown number. A lot has happened. By the way, can I stop by? Is Phil at work? Phil isn't here today as it's a weekday, but I'm off. What time will you arrive? However, Julia started talking without paying attention to my question. Mandy, I have a lot to talk about. Let's have a thorough girls' talk. I only asked her about her arrival time, but I didn't get a specific answer. In the end, Julia arrived just as I had finished a few bites of my lunch. So, I hurriedly put away the rest of the lunch in the fridge, muttering to myself, "Welcome. If you had told me your arrival time, I would have prepared lunch for you. I haven't had lunch yet. I'm starving. Is that so? Shall I make something for you?" At that moment, Julia glanced at the kitchen shelf and waved her hand. What she was looking at was a pound cake from a department store, a gift we had received. A limited edition item that I was looking forward to keeping as a special reward for a special day. I don't want to eat a lot because I'll gain weight, but this cake is tempting. Let's just have this for lunch. Where is the knife? While searching the room for a cake knife, I felt a bit uncomfortable with Julia's insistence. I'll cut it. It's okay. It's cluttered with stuff, and I don't want you to look around too much. Don't worry about it. It's not like things will disappear. I'll cut a piece for you too. When Julia took the knife and started dividing the pound cake, I no longer had the energy to object. Julia placed a thick slice of cake in front of herself and a slice so thin it was almost transparent in front of me, then immediately started talking. Listen, recently my boyfriend has been a bit cold. Even when I say I want to meet him, he makes excuses about work or his daughter. Is that so? He has a daughter? I'm a woman too. Isn't it natural to feel lonely? It's only natural to want attention, right? Interrupting the conversation or getting into too much detail can lead to lingering issues, making it incredibly bothersome. In such cases, it's best to keep nodding with a bright smile. This is a social technique I learned through my job as a medical administrator, but I just couldn't turn a deaf ear to Julia's words. He promised he'd get a divorce from his current spouse if we had a child together. Oh, is that so? I felt something was off recently, so I went to the doctor and found out I'm pregnant. I'm so happy just thinking about when to tell him. When's the right moment, I wonder? I almost dropped her mug of coffee. You're pregnant. Wait, but he's married and has a child, and now you're pregnant? He doesn't find his daughter, who resembles his wife, appealing. He wants to live with me and a lovely child who will resemble me. I can't believe this. Then Julia puffed up her face and continued, I need to have a discussion with his current wife, and to do that it's important that I'm a kind woman with a generous heart, right? I was momentarily at a loss for words at Julia's reckless behavior and comments that could hurt a family. Please, just go home. Why? It's getting dark outside and he'll be coming to pick me up. Oh, I'm interested in that department store coffee in the cabinet. Please go. I just want some quiet time. Coming in like some kind of storm, and hearing about her affair and pregnancy was overwhelming. Why is my sister-in-law, who casually engages in affairs, blessed with a child, while I, who longs for one, visits hospitals and takes medication for it isn't? I didn't want to think that someone in my family could act so callously. Confusion clouded my mind, unable to grasp the situation. About a week after Julia's sudden visit and shocking revelation, Phil came home unusually early from work. Oh, home on time today? It's rare since you often come back late. As I spoke, Phil roughly set down his bag and approached me. I heard from Julia. You said some terrible things to her? What terrible things? She did come over, but I didn't say anything terrible. While responding, I realized he might be referring to the affair and pregnancy, but it was too late. Julia called me crying the night before last. As her brother, I can't just watch her cry. But isn't it unreasonable to say nothing when someone is engaging in morally wrong actions? What are you saying? Are you saying my sister did something immoral? Say it clearly. Affairs and pregnancies were delicate issues, not something easily discussed with a husband, and such matters should be conveyed by the parties involved. One should not intervene rashly. Phil continued his one-sided accusations while I remained silent. Probably just hormonal and taking it out on others, right? You always get emotional so quickly. I wanted to retort, who is being emotional here? But in this situation, Phil wouldn't listen to anything. Caught up in playing the heroic role of protecting his troubled sister, I feel sorry for Julia. Make sure you apologize to her. I couldn't fathom why I should apologize. However, not wanting to exacerbate the issue, I reluctantly apologized. I did apologize later, but the mood was sour and we couldn't have a proper conversation. The next day, as if nothing had happened, phone calls and messages started coming in again. The frequency of her messaging increased, becoming somewhat burdensome. It was difficult to reply during work, but ignoring her would result in complaints to Phil, adding to the hassle. Reluctantly, I responded briefly and engaged in the conversation, but I wanted to avoid her bragging about affairs regardless of the time of day or night. Despite trying to discuss Julia's matters with Phil several times, it was to no avail. You are essentially a housewife now, so you should be able to handle conversations with Julia. Or, are you maybe jealous that she got pregnant first? Not at all. I'm busy too. Receiving messages that require immediate responses at night leads to sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation? Julia is happy she can talk to you. She didn't expect to find someone so easy to talk to. Just listen to her for a bit. It seemed impossible to get Phil to understand. Despite my worries, the continuous messages from Julia remained a nuisance. However, I would later realize how naive I was to express my frustrations through phone calls and emails. About 2 months after I brought up Julia's matters to Phil, as the seasons changed and I considered switching to autumn clothes, the doorbell rang. Had I ordered something? As I headed to the entrance, an unexpected sight greeted me. Boxes piled up as if they were part of a move were being brought into the house. They were addressed to Phil, likely work-related items. But since their arrival, there had been no contact from Phil, and he hadn't returned home. Would have been nice to have prior notice. 3 days after not hearing a single word from Phil, he returned late at night, as if nothing had happened. "Hey, I'm back. No welcome? I'm trying to sleep. It's 1 a.m. Can you keep it down? Oh, you don't like that I'm back?" He was clearly aggressive, likely due to the alcohol. Approaching me, he stumbled over the large boxes and fell heavily. "Hey, what's with these boxes? You should have sorted them out. These are all addressed to you. I can't just open them without your permission. Are you talking back to me? Anyways, you should take care of these." I was stunned by Phil's statement. "What do you mean? I should handle them?" Just as I said, these belong to Julia and my mom. Mostly Julia's stuff, though. Wait, why are Julia's and your mother's belongings being sent here? Phil began to explain cheerfully, as if a long-awaited plan was coming to fruition. "It's all for my dear sister. She's currently renting and her lease is up for renewal. With talks of moving in with her boyfriend or getting married soon, I need to take care of her a bit. I wasn't aware of such plans. I'm about to be promoted to assistant manager, so my salary will increase. It's all good." Having had little contact with Phil's family since our marriage 2 years ago, this new development was bewildering. "You said you weren't getting along with your parents and were estranged, right?" "Yeah, family felt bothersome for a while. But now, with the promotion and pay raise, it's the perfect opportunity to give back to my parents and sister. Are you really okay with suddenly living together? We'll manage. Besides, there's a spare room. If we convert your room into storage space, there should be plenty of room for 4 people to live comfortably. Don't see a problem, do you?" His attitude assumed everything would go smoothly, but I was far from convinced. Moreover, Phil's offer to support Julia before her marriage made me wonder how much he understood our conversations. The information I received was quite different, leaving me anxious. "From now on, you will take care of my mom and sister with me. If you don't like it, let's break up," Phil suddenly declared. It's difficult to respond to such a sudden request. Even if it's for a short period, I prefer to avoid living together. Then we have no choice but to get a divorce, and I'll leave. Then go ahead and try? But I couldn't just leave immediately. I needed to prepare as much as possible in this house first. I needed to see Phil struggling. So, I started by organizing Phil's belongings. I've always doubted his sincerity. Sometimes he came home late at night smelling of woman's perfume, and suspicious cards were frequently found in his pockets. He seemed like a fool if he believed I hadn't noticed with such clear evidence. When I checked the computer we share, I found that Phil had left his account logged in. I was able to go through his emails, and eventually, I was able to confirm his affair. Sugary sweet messages were lined up. The sender was a woman's name. Further investigation revealed newsletters and reservation confirmations from a hotel. It appeared he had visited every Wednesday and Friday. He always said he would be late due to drinking parties with juniors on Wednesdays and with bosses or clients on Fridays. But now I knew the real reason behind it. I knew the name of the hotel, so if I followed him, I thought I would be able to get photographic evidence. However, I was an amateur and wanted to avoid getting caught. I had to devise a plan to obtain solid evidence through surveillance. Julia planned to visit in 4 days, but by then, I was determined to investigate Phil's infidelity and monitor Julia's behavior. Phil misunderstood Julia as the unfortunate heroine, but that was all just a misunderstanding. She was just a cheater, scheming to stay until she could secure getting married. So, I had to prepare for any future events by gathering as much advantageous information as possible. With these thoughts, I continued to gather information on social media. I clicked on a profile that was likely Julia's in the connections with friends section. The photos were heavily edited, changing the shape of her face and the size of her eyes, but it was undoubtedly Julia. After examining the photos and posts uploaded on Julia's page, I came across something I didn't want to be true. I can't believe this. The images Julia uploaded were hints to her relationship, and a specific item belonging to a man caught my eyes. Although his face wasn't clear, the item reminded me of the husband of a close friend from high school. I was close enough to them to have given a speech at their wedding. I remembered his unique taste from my visits to their house when I was still single. For example, a keychain of a shark's bone he shared with his wife, or wallets and ties with unique designs that reflected his preferences. Anyone who knew him could identify him from these items in the photos. I was not sure if my best friend from high school was aware of this situation, but she likely didn't know. Feeling doubtful yet believing my friend is likely unaware, I decide to share just the SNS information with her, leaving it to her discretion whether to confront his infidelity or not. There was also someone else I needed to talk to. It's been a while, Mother. I heard that you'll be staying with us from the day after tomorrow. Phil mentioned it. However, I have something to discuss with you before that. What a coincidence. I was also planning to let you know something before coming over the day after tomorrow. It seemed my mother-in-law also had something she wanted to share with me. In that case, it's time to reveal everything. I'll be frank, I'm considering getting a divorce due to Phil's affair. I'm still here, but once I finish organizing my belongings, I plan to leave. I suspected as much. Phil suddenly started to be kind to me, which was unusual. Do you have evidence? It was understandable that my mother-in-law wanted to see evidence. If her son was committing adultery and that was the reason for the breakup, naturally, she would want to see the evidence. Please look at this. I found it on the computer we share. The exchange of emails and photos prove everything. I see. Is this all the evidence you have? While flipping through the printed emails, my mother-in-law asked a heavy question. Her gaze was suffocating. This is all I have for now. When I confront Phil, I want to have solid evidence, but it's not perfect yet. Well, considering his character, excuses and lies are expected. Please use this and hire a detective. She slowly took something out of her bag, revealing a bank book and a card. What are these funds? It's part of my husband's assets. He had an affair in the past, so I despise infidelity and affairs. Isn't this the perfect opportunity to teach him a lesson? While saying this, my mother-in-law smirked secretly. I had hardly spoken to her before and found her a bit intimidating, but I never expected her to be this supportive. Use these funds to make him take full responsibility. I highly appreciate that a capable woman like you married my irresponsible son, so don't hesitate to rely on it. With my mother-in-law's support, I hired a detective specializing in tracking infidelity and obtained solid evidence. Deciding when to confront Phil with it required carefully thinking things through. 2 weeks after my mother-in-law and Julia started living with us, I was ready to begin my new life. During a holiday, a letter addressed to Julia was forwarded to our house, triggering an unexpected revelation. What? I can't pay $30,000 at once. Weren't you planning on getting married soon? What happened? It's from his wife, demanding compensation. Phil immediately stood up, snatched the document from Julia, and exclaimed, "What's this? A woman's name as the sender? It must be fake, slander, or harassment." Somehow, Phil seemed to believe Julia was completely innocent. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law seemed utterly unaware of the situation. The beloved boyfriend Julia mentioned before is my best friend's husband. You were pregnant, and if the baby was born, he was going to leave his wife and marry you, right? Were you really planning to do that? Was that all a lie? I can't believe it. Trying to destroy someone else's family. While saying this, Julia started to tearfully insist on her innocence. But the relationship with his wife was already strained, and they were on the brink of divorce. He said he wanted to raise our child together, that he wanted our baby. Their relationship was already over, right? So it's not adultery or an affair, and there's no reason for compensation. Look, this must be some kind of prank. Julia has always been the target of jealousy and envy. Feeling it was time to speak up, I broached the subject with Phil. So, you're saying infidelity and affairs are not a problem? Yeah, it's part of being a man, and constantly dealing with compensation and lawyers seems excessive. Just overlook it. I spread the photos taken by the detective across the table. The person in these images is unmistakably you, Phil, right? According to the research, you were having an affair with a woman called Sarah, your business partner. Please stop belittling people. Disregarding my rage, Phil still managed a light laugh. I've said it before, but this is a man's pride. If you can't understand this, social life will be difficult. That's enough. My intention to divorce is firm, and the responsibility lies with you, Phil. Of course, I'll be demanding compensation as well. Wait a minute, that's unacceptable, right? What's this about compensation? Calm down a bit. While this was happening, my mother-in-law raised her voice in anger. I've been listening to all this nonsense all this time, and there's no saving Phil or Julia. I never thought my own children would have such a rotten personality. I'm disappointed. Wait, I don't have that kind of money. Mom, please pay for it. Think of it as the college tuition I never used. No matter what excuse you have, I won't be convinced, so just give up. As my mother-in-law and Julia were arguing, Phil turned to me, seeking clarification. You're not seriously considering divorce and compensation, right? You still love me, don't you? What are you talking about? You cheated on me, made unilateral decisions, and who was it that threatened divorce if I didn't accept living with your mother and Julia? All of a sudden, Phil started to cry hearing my response. My meeting with Sarah was fate, true love. What we had was a completely different kind of love. You understand, right? You'll support our love, won't you? I wasn't able to understand you from the start, and I have no intention to do now either. I've finished packing, so I'm leaving this place. Are you really going to leave? What am I supposed to do? I looked down at Phil, who was pitifully pleading at my feet, and declared my final decision. I don't care. You'll be getting the divorce papers and documents about the compensation, so deal with them. Thanks to involving a lawyer, our divorce proceeded smoothly. An agreement was reached to ensure the payment of compensation. Although my mother-in-law lost her husband, she was healthy both mentally and physically and has started living alone for the first time in her life. She seemed to be leading a fulfilling life with her hobbies and training every day. As for Julia, it seems her affair and pregnancy became widely known. People's gossip was inevitable, and eventually it became a well-known fact. She was fired from her temporary job, and with the rumors about her affair spreading, it became difficult for her to find employment anywhere else. Moreover, Julia's affair partner ultimately chose to make up with his wife, my close friend, leaving Julia completely abandoned. One day, Julia, driven by anger, confronted me. You revealed his and my secret to his wife, didn't you? Was your promise to wholeheartedly celebrate our happiness a lie? Julia accused me furiously. I responded calmly. I never uttered a word about celebrating. Infidelity is unacceptable under any circumstances. Moreover, since she is my close friend, I could not stand by and watch her suffer and fall into misfortune. But your interference was unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. Julia raised her voice. I lost my job, can't find a new one, and even lost the person I loved the most. I blame you for all of this. During our confrontation in a bustling supermarket, Julia attempted to physically confront me, but fortunately, a young security guard intervened promptly, preventing the situation from escalating any further. Both Phil and Julia tried to seek help from their mother, but she coldly rejected all requests. Meanwhile, I heard Phil, due to his dishonest actions, was abandoned by his lover and fell into a gambling addiction. As a result, he was late in paying the compensation, so I decided to request his employer to garnish his wages. The rumor of the divorce caused by the compensation issue spread like wildfire throughout Phil's workplace, becoming a serious issue that could not be overlooked. Despite being a top sales performer respected by many colleagues, his personal actions were scrutinized, leading to his transfer to a department often referred to as the sideline room, where employees merely bide their time without meaningful work. After the divorce, I embraced my newfound freedom, fully enjoying my personal time. Although I once deeply desired to have children and build a happy family with Phil, that now seemed like a distant memory, and I decided to prioritize my financial independence. Furthermore, in my new partner, whom I met through work, I have found a serious and supportive relationship that brings a new sense of fulfillment to my life. He is a mid-career male nurse, skilled at empathizing with others, and our conversations always provide comfort and reassurance, whether or not we decide to have children. He is a trustworthy and wonderful person who accepts me entirely, allowing us to build our future together. I am determined to forge my path in life, focusing on pursuing my happiness.